Good evening. Good evening, and welcome to another in a series of webinars brought to you by the National Council of Negro Women. Every second and fourth Thursday evenings, we are here to bring you information that we think is important, and we hope that it'll be useful to you. Tonight, we have a very special topic, COVID-19, a perspective from Black men. And they will tell you in their own words how this pandemic is affecting them and their brothers and sisters and families. At this point, it is my honor to introduce someone who is very special to me and to NCNW. But before we get to that, I want Kevin Johannes, who is our expert communications director, to give you a few tips on how to use this GoToWebinar platform.
Good evening. If you are logged in, you should see a menu on your right side. The first one is microphone, and all the way at the bottom is a little thing that looks like a pencil. You are able to ask a question and raise your hand. We're going to try to do something a little different tonight, so if you would raise your hand, we'll see if we can call on you. Also, if you write down a question, please be brief. Don't give us a paragraph. Get right to the nuts and bolts so that we can read it off to our panelists. Thank you.
Thank you, Johannes. That's very helpful. And you can raise your hand if you have a question, and type your question in to him and he can respond to you that way. I said that she's very special, not special just to me, but special to people across the country and the globe. You know her as the former president of Spelman College, former president of Bennett College, also the director of the Smithsonian Museum of African Art. She is someone who is highly trained as an anthropologist. She's been an advisor to corporate America, including people like Disney and Pixar. They come to her for advice to make sure their movies are culturally correct, which I think is just the best gig anybody ever had. But she has also taken time out of her very busy and accomplished life to be the president of the National Council of Negro Women. It's my honor to present Dr. Janetta Betch-Cole.
My sisters, my brothers, my siblings all, good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Just extend a virtual sisterly hug to 4 righteous brothers who will participate in tonight's webinar. Co-chairs of the Charles L. Franklin Associates. You know him, Brother Harry Johnson. Attorney Harry Johnson, we are eternally indebted to you for your work in making the monument to the drum major for justice, Dr. King,
Amen,
a part of America's reality and the reality of the world. And thank you for agreeing to co-host the Charles L. Franklin Associates, and to do so with James D. Staton Jr., known by some as JD, and known by me as my husband. Now, there's no way in the world that we could have done the program tonight without a man of the cloth, because we all remember Dr. Mary McLeod Bethune's words: without faith, nothing is possible.
my Lord.
Thank you so much, Brother Rev Granger Browning.
Thank you, Dr. Cole.
We're also just thrilled to have Dr. Edwin Powell with us. You know, in these days when so many seem to ignore knowledge, information, facts, science, thank you. Thank you for being here and bringing your perspective to this webinar. Now, I've just got to say it. Everybody has the right to claim a special bro. Randus Wallace, you know you're my special brother because you're on the front line during this pandemic. My respect and admiration for you is just unending. Well, my sisters and my brothers, I am very proud of the fact that from the beginning of the acknowledgement of this horrific pandemic, NCNW has been on it. First of all, by urging our more than 2 million Black women, the members of NCNW, to follow the CDC guidelines, to protect themselves, to do all that we can in the interest of the safety of our families and our communities. But we've done more than that. We have been unrelenting in pointing out the disparities in how this virus affects people. If anyone tells you that this virus is an equal opportunity attacker, challenge it as we do, because we know that our people, Black Americans, are dying at 2/3 the times of our population share. And the third thing that we have done in NCNW is to call for disaggregating the statistics, disaggregating those statistics so that we can have specific information on the effects of COVID-19 on Black women. And then fourth, we have been speaking up and speaking out about a reality that we've known. Some folk in America say it's new information to them. How well we have known that racism, that poverty, and in the case of Black women, sexism drives health disparities. I want to thank my sister friend, Attorney Janice L. Mathis, known to me as Sister ED, because she has been on this issue of the coronavirus like white on rice, or I should say like black on coal, doing the research, organizing webinars, reaching out to our membership. Again, I do want to thank our co-chairs, Brothers Harry Johnson and Brother J.D. Staton, for hosting this very informative, I'm claiming it, informative and inspiring webinar. Let me close now. Let me close as you kind of expect me to, with a proverb. This is an African proverb that gives us wisdom for every day, but wisdom that is especially pertinent during a crisis. And we are in a health crisis. From Nigeria comes the proverb that says, in the midst of a crisis, the wise build bridges, the foolish build dams. In CNW, we will continue to build bridges into the very communities that are our own. Thank you.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cole. Well, let's get started then. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
What a joy it is for me to be here along with JD Stanton so that we can do this webinar. Let's talk for a minute first about what is the Charles L. Franklin Associates, CLFA. The Charles Franklin Associates is a men's membership wing of the National Council of Negro Women. The CLF Associates is named in honor of the late Dr. Charles L. Franklin, an activist, leader, and an advocate for family health, who was highly supportive of the National Council of Negro Women, and then Dr. Dorothy L. Height. What is the Associates' mission? The primary mission is to support the programmatic focus of the National Council of Negro Women. How do we do that, and what do? We promote it through science, technology, engineering, art, and math education. We do it by encouraging entrepreneurship, financial literacy, and economic stability. We also do it by promoting good health and eliminating health disparities, promoting civic engagement and sound public policy. How do we accomplish this mission? I'm glad you asked. By joining and participating in local sections that you'll be able to join, and I'm sure we'll put up something on the web so you know how to join. Helping with mentorship and life skills coaching of young men, hosting webinars and training grounds for programmatic focus, and attending the NCNW events. Now it gives me great pleasure to introduce our panelists for tonight. I'm Harry Johnson, as was stated. I'm happy to be co-chair with this next brother. I'm going to introduce James Stanton Jr. He is an executive coach and business consultant with more than 30 years of experience in corporate, government management, and leadership positions. The firm he focuses with is helping executives and other individuals discover their untapped potential to live fuller and more productive and joyous lives. Brandis Wallace, he is the CEO and founding of Mending Minds, a comprehensive supportive service corporate company dedicated to life coaching that helps individuals and families negotiate life's challenges and complications. Dr. Cole mentioned that we also have with us Dr. Edwin Powell, a noted and world-renowned psychologist. He has research interests and publications in education, disability advocacy, health equity, mental health, and law. He is a former human rights commissioner, governance analysis, a special educated teacher, juvenile probation officer, and a high school principal. He was also appointed by the District of Columbia Superior Court to be a mental health expert. And then bringing up all of us, and spiritually, we have the Reverend Dr. Granger Browning Jr., who is a senior pastor of Ebenezer African American Episcopal Church of Fort Washington, Maryland. The good thing you can say about Reverend is that he's always there to support us with prayer and help us mend along. But what you don't know is that when he was called to pastor, he had 17 members, a budget of $12,000 in 1979. To date, he could boast and say, because of his leadership and his wife's leadership, 8,000 members, $8 million budget. He advocates for spirituality, education, political, social, economic, and health needs of the community. Those are our panelists for the evening. We thank you so much for joining. And with that being said, let us get started on what we want to talk about tonight. I have the pleasure of starting us off tonight. And what we're going to do is, after each presentation, allow you to ask questions on any topic we discuss, or give us your opinion on what we talk about, because we do want to hear from you and what's going on in your community. So the objectives of the webinar: number one, to inform members and the public about resources and tools that are out there to help each one of us in our personal lives and in the community. To encourage families to be more proactive in seeking assistance. So often we are scared to ask for help. Well, this is a time when we all need help. Every last one of us, when you drive around and you see the people in the food bank lines who never thought they'll be there, when you see people who are hungry, you still have to feed the kids and take care of kids who are out of school. All of us need help. And I'm so glad we're going to talk about that today with our psychologists, and also with Reverend Granger talking about our spirituality help. then we have to emphasize the importance of protecting your emotional, physical, and spiritual health. How proud we are all to be here with you tonight. We encourage you to ask questions. So I think you can raise your hand. Johannes, do you want to talk about how they can ask questions, raise their hand, how what button they need to hit, and then we'll continue on.
Yes, sir. As I said before, on that bottom button on the panel that you have on your right side, there's either a hand or what looks like a pencil. You can either write it down or you can raise your hand and we'll see if we can get you on by audio.
Wonderful. Thank you. Our first topic that we want to get into would be talking about health disparities and public policy. Why is race an issue? Well, number one, we talk about SDOH, the social determinants of health. We talk about the social determinants of health. That means basically the conditions that each one of us live in and we came from, the environments where you work, the environments where you go to school, the environments where you play. Those are all social determinants of health. It's important to talk about that because as we look and see what's going on now with this virus, it's affected each one of us differently, but it also comes home to our community because it affects how we live and how we negotiate lives in our communities. Let me give you a couple of pointers here and talk about a perspective of COVID-19. Less than 1 in 5 Black workers and roughly 1 in 6 Hispanics workers are able to work from home. So we talk about race, and that's understanding that people of color have to go to work. Bottom line, I mean, we're on the jobs doing either driving a bus, serving food, basically washing clothes, making sure that everybody else can do what they need to do. Let's talk about the people working at the hospital. So it's not just the nurses and the doctors, but who's feeding them? Who's cleaning the hospital? These are all folks who have to go out and work. And guess what? They look like you and I. And so when we talk about teleworking, everybody can't telework. Some of the facts is that in the Anglo part of our race, 29.9% of folks are able to telework. Black African Americans, only 19.7 are able to do it. And the Asian population, 37.0 could do it. When you look at the ethnics of this, 16.2 Latinos may be able to work from home, and non-Latino, non-Hispanic, 31.4. These are very troubling issues that we have to face. Something else that we look at again is race and how the COVID is affecting our race. Let's talk about 2 states in particular. Michigan. State of Michigan has a Black population of 15%, but yet the virus is affecting 35%. Let's look at Illinois. State population of African Americans, 16%. COVID victims, 30%. Other troubling data that we look at, let's look at 2 other states. North Carolina, Black population, 24%. COVID victims, 35%. South Carolina, state population of African Americans, 28%. Black folks who were affected by COVID, 36%. Let's talk about in Wisconsin, people have tested positive. Black population, 45%. Percentage of the population in one particular county, in Milwaukee County, 26%. What is our challenges for the future? Number one, Black folks are disproportionately diagnosed with COVID-19. Black men are most likely to die from the virus. You heard the stories and you see the news reports all day long. A husband has it, wife has it, they're in a hospital, husband dies. Test kits and disposables are still not universally available to anybody, but especially in our community. We all have heard the story of the PPE, masks, gowns. Anytime in America that we have to start using trash bags to tell our health population that they need to wear that as protective gear, something is wrong. And it happens when you look at the nurses, when you look at doctors of Asian descent, Hispanic, and also African American. They are lacking the necessary things to protect themselves, but yet they have to come in and take care of our brothers and sisters who are sick. some of the underlying factors that we know that are happening in Black men and women totally that affects us more: diabetes, heart disease, high blood pressure. All these things affect us more adversely. And so we'll talk about health, and we'd love to talk and hear about your deal about health and what you think about health. But it's a lesson to all of us that we have to remain healthy, not just for the COVID virus, but for anything. We have to remain healthy. There's a time in our lives when we could eat hamburgers every other day. We can eat fried fish and fried chicken. We can't do that anymore. And we need to teach our community that we need to be healthier. As I draw to the close of my last slide, and then Brother JD, you can open it up for questions or comments. Working towards solutions. Number one, what should the government response be? It ought to be generous. These are government dollars: unemployment, health coverage, and paid leave. Support for the small and minority businesses. You've heard the stats already. When the first round of money came out for what we call PPP, it's gone. Next step came up today. They're voting today, but the money will be gone tomorrow. There needs to be more money pushed out for not large corporations. You heard about Ruth Chris Steakhouse, you heard about Potbellies, and all these folks who got a large chunk of money, but yet the folks who have a beauty shop, barber shop, everything, they're not getting any money. These folks need to eat. And I hate to say this, but I was talking to the director of the FBI in Houston. He said their biggest fear is that as this thing gets worse, crime is going to go up. And we're not talking about crime of killing, but we're talking about robbery. People want to eat, so they're looking for the ATM machines to be snatched out and all that. That's what's going to happen as this thing continues on. What should communities do? Push for testing and push for contact tracing. I know nobody wants Big Brother zooming in on them, knowing what they're doing, but we've got to know that if you tested positive, that we should know who you've been in contact with and where you're going so we can help protect the community. I think everybody was just miffed when they cut out the basketball, all of that. But guess what? We can live without that if we want to live. In Houston alone, we have a rodeo that goes on, a black rodeo, well, rodeo period, I'm sorry, 50,000 people a night for 6 weeks. They canceled it after 3 days, which was the smartest thing they could have ever done. So families, what should families do? Observe social distancing, actively seek available resources, services, and programs. Again, this is not a time to be proud. This is a time to ask for help. And that's mental health, that's financial help. It's just help understanding that we need to do better, we can do better, and we shall do better. I thank you so much for listening to me. With that, JD, you can take it and see if there are any questions. I appreciate you listening.
Yeah, thank you, Brother Harry, for launching this very important discussion. And I want our audience to know that, yes, this is a discussion, and we certainly glad to be here with you. I just received information that the PowerPoint slides that you are seeing are available in the handout section of the, I'm sure, on the instrument or the device that you have accessed the webinar. So the PowerPoint slides are available. I apologize we didn't mention that to you up front. Brother Johannes, we are now ready to receive questions and comments from those participating in this webinar.
Yes, Ms. Jerica Washington asked, are Black bankers catching the loans to serve our communities?
Yes, they are. One of the deals I can tell you from experience, I'm getting calls, and I have another webinar in the next hour talking about economic development. If you want some money, you got to know a banker. And I think that's probably what we saw in the first round, that Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, they gave the money to their best customers. I would implore you that if you know a banker, go talk to your banker and do it tomorrow. Most of them are doing all this online. Go online, fill out your application, and get it done. If you are a sole proprietor, barbershop owner, beauty shop, nail salon, fill out the form for the PPP. They give you 2.5 of your monthly salary. So it's basically a loan, may turn into a grant, but you should take advantage.
Yeah, and let me comment that I read your small business center, and I hope, certainly appreciate that question. Please take advantage of the small business center, emails, webinars, information sessions that they are putting on. We don't want to miss any opportunity. We have to work it so that we will be involved. We will not be excluded. we will not miss out on any funds. So we can't wait for them to come to us. We have to turn to pages and go to them.
Any other panelists want to say anything regarding that question? Okay, good. Let's go. Any other questions?
Ms. Irvin, if you want to unmute your mic and ask your question, Ms. Charlene Irvin, you can.
Irvin?
Okay. Mr. Pierce says, what should we advocate for? A national health insurance plan?
Anybody want to take that? Well, let me say this. I think right now the best thing that can happen is, number one, if they're not going to do a national insurance plan, they certainly should lower the age for Medicare down to 60. They need to do anything they can to make sure that people who are aging have insurance and able to get to a doctor. Nobody wants to talk about national health insurance, but it's needed. It's needed in our community more than any other place, and it's needed now. People are scared to go to the doctor because they're scared they have to pay for a test. They're scared because they have to pay for a doctor. There are scams out there. I saw something on TV a few weeks ago where somebody put on a coat and was talking about their testing, and it was definitely just a scam. So we have to be knowledgeable, but we do need insurance for everyone in this country.
And I would like to comment, I don't know the details, and I do have colleagues who are still working with Obamacare. And we know that's a political hot button, but it was the closest thing to get all Americans insured, or Americans who do not have insurance. And with this pandemic, we're gonna end up with a lot of folks without insurance. And so if Obamacare is the only thing, and thank you for that question, what we advocate for, we need to see what we have in place today. If we advocate for universal or national health care, that's be tied up in politics for a long time. I'm gonna use that word. But let's see, can we learn more about what we have at hand, and can we keep it?
We have a question here. It says, how can we best combat voter suppression when the governors are positioning to cancel or change election dates?
Anybody want to handle that one? I think the best way to deal with voter suppression is to write to your congressional members to say, we want a fair election. I think we just found out from Milwaukee, Wisconsin last week, by not changing the date to allow folks, you got 7 or 8 people who already tested positive from the virus. So we just have to have voter participation at all levels. And other folks are going to do whatever they can to stop us from participating in the process. We got to participate in the process. We also must not do it at the risk of losing your lives either.
Thank you.
And I know I'm not a panelist, but that's sort of my sweet spot. That to contact your members of Congress. There is legislation that has passed the House of Representatives that would reinstate many provisions of the Voting Rights Act. Mitch McConnell won't bring it up in the Senate. I'm not saying that because he's of any party, but the fact of the matter is HR 1 passed in March of last year. It has not even had a hearing in the United States Senate. The other thing that you can do is visit your county board of elections.
Yes.
Make sure they know you. Go in groups, watch their meetings. That is where a lot of these decisions are being made. And I'm so glad somebody asked that question because it's so important. Thank you.
Also, I'm hoping that with churches not being able to actually have services, that have been a major mobilization. And what the National Council of Negro Women are doing now, I'm hoping that pastors will not only have prayers, will not only have worship services, but also have times by which using webinars, Zooms, conference calls to also encourage our people to vote when the elections are taking place in our individual states.
Yeah, this is Edwin Powell. And I'd like to say, kind of piggyback on what Ms. Mathis just said. The down ballots are just as important as the national and state and federal elections, because like she just said, The down ballots, such as the state, local, county governments, are the ones who actually control and manage the election headquarters and so forth. So it's important that we pay as much attention to down ballots as we do other elections. I know that Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez has put forth a number of pieces of legislation that actually talks about different alternative ways of voting. And I think that we need to, create a listening ear and listen to what she's saying. She's very progressive, as a number of colleagues in this new freshman class in Congress, but coming up with new ideas and new innovative ways that individuals can actually exercise their rights to vote. So that's an excellent question. It's something that's in the forefront. It's on everyone's mind in terms of how this pandemic is going to actually impact our right to vote. And so we need to keep our eyes open and stay woke.
Agree. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for those questions. And we're ready to move on to the next topic. And we'll bring up Randus Wallace to lead a conversation on economic financial aspects of COVID-19. Randus?
Okay. What is economic challenge? 1, Black men work in essential occupations. 2, Black men are less likely to have paid medical leave or health care. 3, Black men feel they have no choice but to work. Period. I don't think that's less clear. Next. Economic and financial resources. Unemployment resources. SBA loans to business owners. Direct payment to taxpayers. Next. What are some of the financial options? Direct payment to taxpayers. Contact your lenders to make special arrangements on payments, late fees, and Google to get different information. SBA loans, short-term disability benefits, workers' compensation. Next. The CARE Act, economic impact payments, money in the bank. The president signed into law an economic stimulus package known as the CARE Act. This includes an economic impact payment, also known as the stimulus payments, to qualified American households. $1,200 for individuals, $2,400 for married couples, and $500 per child under age 17. Now, some people will get their money faster than others, and other people who are not required to file taxes need to contact the IRS and file and look under a form called non-filers, and they will walk you through the whole process. Next. More financial options. You don't want to suffer in silence. Contact your creditors and many are offering special terms as no late fees or interest or existing auto loans, first payment on new loans, deferred 90 days, no late fees for 120 days, no report to your credit bureau for 120 days. Visit your creditor's website for more information. Next. What can the communities do? I read something recently about Los Angeles County. What they're doing is amazing. It's unprecedented. They've got about 50 or so major prominent community leaders that have released and set demands on public officials to meet the urgent needs of Black folks in Los Angeles County. Focuses on the coronavirus. Now, I believe that this is a major, it's wonderful. I think every state and county and community can model after it. Any questions?
Johannes, do we have any questions, any comments?
1 second. There are some questions coming in. Who can bring major national American leaders together for a town hall or national television to address these disparities and take actions and steps? Urban League, NAACP, fraternities, sororities. Can you talk about that?
Anyone want? I believe your major Black organizations can take it in any community can take a swing at that one. National League, National Council, any Black organization.
How can we ensure that the community is getting the correct information?
Well, I think again, you have to stay with the leaders, the people that you trust in.
I think that's all we have on this topic right now.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you all so much. Now let us go to our next presenter to talk about planning for and after the pandemic, Mr. James D. Stanton.
Yes, again, good evening, brothers, and to those sisters. As my wife would often say to those righteous, she said righteous brothers. I'm saying to those righteous sisters who are supporting us during this webinar. I want to certainly thank you all. My assignment this evening is to invite and imagine how we plan to live and work in a post-pandemic world. Well, first I would invite us to take the lessons learned and practices that we have been engaged in while we have been sheltering in place. Don't leave it, don't lose it. So take those lessons learned. And I hope those of you on the call with me have learned quite a bit since you have sheltered at home about yourselves, about your way of being. So let's take that forward with us. I'm speaking of two ways that I believe that we need to approach this. One is in our work lives and in our personal lives. When this pandemic is over, once we move into what we call the new normal, we want to practice some of the work and organization patterns we were forced to use over the last few months. And I believe Dr. Browning mentioned that. He mentioned video, webcam, and even when we talking about the political era, we have seen that we are working from home. We have church services, sometimes 3 times a day for some of us, that the people are using FaceTime, real time, live. So this is one that will become the new norm for us. And we should hold on to that and continue to practice the way we have organized our families, the way we have organized our shopping, the way we have organized our work, our basic work habits. Many of us at home have gotten used to what we are using tonight, and that's technology. I do know, in reality, there's a generation that is afraid to approach technology. And that is a reality. But that is, post-pandemic is a way of the future. For example, your medicines, your prescriptions, your medical records will be sent to you through this telemedicine system that the doctors will sign up. And minutes, it's going to be limited face-to-faces. And I believe it's going to continue in the post-pandemic world that you only come to the doctor once they pre-screen you and if they need to see you. I hope that is clear. So conversation is, I'm going to follow back up my doctor to see what the report says. No, that report will be sent to you. You will need a computer to access that information. And then for those of us in the community who are not engaged in technology, we have to get with our young folks who are technically savvy to teach us. We can't be afraid to learn. We still have the ability to learn. Matter of fact, some of your grandchildren are probably pretty smart. And I'm talking about in the first, second, third, no, in the, first grade, second grade, third grade. They can use it. They know how to use technology. Ask them, baby, come sit down with me and show grandpa or show your grandmother how to use this thing. That's what we need to learn. Then for those who we have grandchildren who are college graduates, those who have majored in technology, take time with patience. Don't frighten the elderly on all the language with technology. Just show them the basics, how to move from A to B, and have patience with them. Oh, you can move the slide. I'm probably long gone from the slides. And then through this post-pandemic, it's a reality that we have lost jobs. There will be a new way of getting jobs. I was thinking before this webinar, and it took me back to the days when I worked in the textile industry. When there's a layoff, and now they use a new word, essential and non-essential employees. Who do you think they're going to call back first? Business have been operated with a few essential employees and non-essential. Another reality, it's an opportunity for companies to get rid of folks who have not been productive, who have not been engaged, and it's a time for them to balance, and they will balance their books. They will survive. And human labor, human capital is the first place they're gonna cut. That is a reality. I have experienced that in my life, that we don't need all of these layers of management. We don't need all these bottom layers of non-essential people. One or two can do it. And if they use technology to do it, they're gonna use technology to replace human beings. So that is reality. So what do we have to do? We should sharpen our skills in this new era. This is an opportunity. Online classes are being offered in our schools, at home for our children. You see these things. Let us get on board now. We don't have to wait and go ask for a job. You won't be able to do that. You will be interviewing virtually. You will be interviewing online. That means they will see you. If not, they will talk on the phone. You got to be able to speak. You have to convince a new employer, a new HR director, that I am the best candidate for the job. The competition in the new after the pandemic era is going to be very steep. We talked about that, being creative and these new skills, presenting ourselves in different ways. We must get the equipment at home and have that equipment capable of downloading multiple applications. Get your young people in your family to help you to buy the right computer. You don't necessarily need a Cadillac, but help me to buy the right computer. Shopping will be online. More shopping is online. And I believe you might see on one of the slides that Amazon, people have been online buying groceries. So this perhaps continue. New ways of being. For those of us who have been at home working with our children in homeschooling, in the new era, don't stop. You have been working with your children, brothers, continue to work with those children now. If you have been the chef at home, learning to cook, keep on cooking, don't stop. They will see daddy now making meals that they probably have never seen before, and don't stop that. Be a shared situation. Have room in the kitchen to make these brownies and make these wonderful dishes at the same time. And then the last thing we already mentioned earlier, your health. You have concentrated on your health now. COVID-19 had us all walking around wondering, we were sniffing, did we have it? If we had a chest pain from anxiety, did we have it? If anybody coughed, did we get it? Then we saw all of these health challenges in front of us that we have known all along. When we look at the news that why we are dying as a Black race, we knew these things there, but COVID-19 brought it to life. let us continue to take care of ourselves, eat healthily, go get our checkups. We have been begging men after session, you know you need to go check. Get rid of this homophobic situation, nobody touching me. But if it's to save your life, get touched. Get touched. So this is what the way I view and challenge all of us to envision what our new world would look like and be like in non-pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, JD. Johannes, do we have any questions?
So I need to cut my mic on. Yes, we were asked, there are senior programs in some cities. Do they offer classes in computers?
Wait, what was the question again?
Some cities have classes for seniors. Do we know if they offer classes in basic computer?
Now, I think a lot of your, let me mention this. Now, I don't have the exact one, but check with your local community. First of all, community college, and in their community, it's senior centers where they
Also,
do basic 101 computer classes for seniors. Yes. And
also local libraries as well. Have many things for seniors.
In some churches, probably, right, Reverend Browning?
Yes, there many churches are doing computer labs again with the virus and the social distancing. It's now being done online, but yes, a lot of churches have computer learning centers.
And you want to check with your local YMCA as well, any recreation centers.
But then let's go back to we don't know what it will be non-pandemic era for these computers. Online, I think that's the question is online. And there's some work to be done. Get someone in your family to help you to see will that church offer an hour a day for online, or will the library offer it online? So the key is online. And let's not forget that. Let's use technology. Think in terms of technology to bring it to our seniors at home, where we minimize the exposure of going out to take these classes. Okay.
Mr. Dennis Murray, who was at our first meeting, said that his organization, the YDACBINC and the DDSM consultant, enlist the assistance of students from the 1890 land grant institutions to help teach technology in underserved regions. They've been doing it for a while now, and that's one of the ways that they can reach people.
Okay, is that in a way that we could send that out? I don't know the acronym of his organization. We certainly appreciate him sharing that, and that is good information. I hope could you repeat it slowly so they can write it down if we don't have a way to communicate that?
Yes, it's YDACBINC. I'll say that again, YDACBINC. And he also has the DDSM consultants. But they use students to help people learn technology. And Mr. Murray was with us when we had our convention, Dorothy Height and us all affiliate assembly.
Thank you.
Is that on the questions, Johannes?
Yes, sir.
Okay. At this point, let's talk about the emotional aspects of COVID. So Dr. Powell, would you take that topic for us, please?
Yes, sir. And good afternoon, good evening now to everyone who's joined us. Good evening to my co-panelists. I wanted to first of all say that I hope that what you heard thus far has been inspiring, that we've inspired some hope, and that we've at least eased some fears that some of you are feeling in the communities. Most importantly, African-American males are disproportionately more at risk for stress and anxiety. And so we're hoping that what we're bringing before you this evening will help someone in your family, both men and women, but that you can use this and put some of our points in your toolbox and carry it back into the communities and share it. One of the things that a lot of Black men have faced during this epidemic is the majority of Black men, disproportionately Black men have been laid off in terms of unemployment claims and so forth. disproportionately Black men are suffering. And it causes a great deal of stress. Well, how's the mortgage going to be paid? For example, a number of the banks or your servicers will tell you that you can defer your payments for 3 months, but what happens at the end of that 3 months? You have to pay that money back at the end of that 3 months. So if you don't have the money now, that's going to be 3 months of accumulation, and then at the end of that 3 months, then that's going to be that much more stress. But that's when you really need to start planning now and sitting down with your servicers and talking about how to pay this off, whether through a payment plan or whether being placing it on the back end of the loan, or most importantly, a lot of people don't know about actually requesting loan modification, that you can indeed ask your service provider for loan modification if you have had a change in your income. So all of these things causes stress. And what does stress do? Stress is nothing new. Stress is something that we deal with every day. We deal with eustress. Before this pandemic, when we're driving to work, you deal with a little eustress. But this is what we call distress, when we're actually confined to our homes, and your anxiety level increases and so forth and so on. And it's something called the hypothalamus, pituitary, and adrenal axis that actually controls the stress hormone called cortisol. And I can imagine that individuals who never experienced stress in their lives now have been exposed to high cortisol levels because of this pandemic. And so we have to take care of ourselves. We have to make sure that we understand when we're under stress, because a lot of people don't know when they're under stress and somewhat implode and sometimes explode. And so we're starting to see a large increase in terms of incidences of domestic violence and abuse. And when we talk about domestic violence and abuse, it has a lot to do with the proximity of individuals. The fact that the aggressor and the victim now is actually confined in the home. Back before the epidemic, the pandemic, you had, of course, children at school, which separated them from the aggressor for a certain amount of time during the day, or separated a spouse from another spouse who actually worked. But now that everyone's at home, that proximity actually increases the chances of violence actually occurring inside the home. Increase of drug and alcohol abuse. The National Institute of Drug Abuse has already put out a white paper already stating that the alcohol and drug abuse has actually increased. And so what that does is just alcohol and drug abuse in and of itself is actually creates a cascading effect. If someone is actually stressed out or someone suffering from a mental health disorder, what happens is that alcohol and drugs actually suppresses that urge to be violent, or that urge to be anxiolytic, or that urge to be depressed or suffering from bipolar. But when you actually come down off of the either a drunken stupor or a high from drugs, then you're back in the exact same situation. And so for African, and you can move to the next slide too, Johans. African Americans in general, and I want to talk about this pandemic, this disease, COVID. We're much more predisposed to this, and I know you've heard it quite a bit on the news, and it has much more to do with the fact that African Americans have a very high allostatic load, and that allostatic load has to do with years of discrimination, marginalization, and being disenfranchised, that we have been genetically programmed to suffer disproportionately from diabetes mellitus, from cardiovascular diseases and hypertension and other ailments. So it places us at risk, and when not to mention when you're actually stressed out, it decreases your immune system. And the alcohol and smoking and drugs also decreases the gut flora in our stomach, which actually is our natural fight or our immune system. So, acknowledge your feelings. Some of the feelings, write yourself a letter, breathe deeply. This is called biofeedback. Listening to uplifting music. I listen to different genres of music, but when I'm down, I mostly pick up gospel music and listen to that. and most importantly, through the telemedicine links that we now have, link up with a therapist, confide in a friend. You cannot suffer alone, and most importantly, meditate and pray, because there are times when we can actually use this to our advantage. Use this quiet. There's nothing wrong with quiet from time to time, and this is an opportunity to embrace quiet and to meditate and actually pray. Yoga and Pilates, crossword puzzles, and short walks, and cooking, but just don't overeat, because that's what I'm doing. I find myself here at home with my wife, and I tell you, every time I turn around, the refrigerator is open and I'm in there. So you can move to the next slide too. So, but we have to look out for ourselves. We have to make sure that our neighbors are okay. We have to make sure our family members are okay, and we need to communicate. We need to communicate with each other. Acknowledge your feelings and make sure that men over time have always been the ones to suppress our emotions. We suppress emotions more so than women, and it's just something, I don't know what it has. It's the machismo syndrome, but we have to find ways to open up and have conversations, because to suppress or repress these emotions will only make us implode. So I think this is my last slide, and I'll yield for any questions if there are any.
Well, thank you, Dr. Powell. Due to time, and I believe we're not going to have, I apologize, we're not going to have time for additional questions at this time. We offer our apologies. For the next few moments, we definitely want to give Dr. Browning time to close us out. Oh, is it 8:30?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. So we go over, I do apologize. I don't know why I thought it was 8 o'clock, 8:30. My bad. I apologize.
We know you want to see the draft.
Yeah. Johanna,
You didn't have to call him out like that.
so we take questions for Dr. Powell. That one, yeah. So Johannes, would you please open up the questions for Dr. Powell?
And could we go back to that slide and hear you speak about our children? I was really touched by your
Coping skills for kids.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
It's got animation built
There
into
we
it.
are.
Yeah.
Nice project.
Yep. And just like Dr. Coles just mentioned, making videos. This is, kids are definitely technocrats. So I mean, in terms of they're technologically savvy, and videos is something, reading. Let's encourage reading, especially amongst our young people, and writing. This is something that I find that the federal government uses to actually screen out certain applications is writing skills. And so we have to, this is an excellent way of actually introducing writing skills to our young people, and not to mention science projects that can occur right in the kitchen.
There you go.
But Dr. Powell, talk about writing creative writing for adults.
Yep.
Where the adults may not get involved. Well, they will help the children with science projects, of course. But let's talk about the power of writing. I use it in my practice. Writing, creative writing, journaling, and the impact, not the impact, the benefits of this creative writing, and your thoughts, your emotions. If you don't share your emotions openly, then there's the power of writing and recording. Talk about that from your experience.
Yes, creative writing has always been, in my case, in my opinion, have always been a cross cadre between the Department of Psychology and in English, because creative writing is more than just putting pen in hand and putting pen to paper. It's actually using the prefrontal cortex of your brain. It's using the creative, what we call the executive function skills, the problem solving. It's putting together critical thinking. It's putting together reasoning skills. And all of those things are needed in creative writing. And so when we put all those things together and we continuously stimulate that portion of the brain, the prefrontal cortex of the brain, not only does it improve brain function, it improves, as a matter of fact, individuals who write and who do crossword puzzles have lower chances of having Alzheimer's and dementia. It also improves memory. It also helps individual with speech and public elocution. So it's something that's pretty much looked upon as a dreadful task. But when you look at just the complexities of creative writing and which portions of the brains are actually stimulated by doing it, it really makes sense that we should be doing a lot more of it, and much more importantly, introducing it to our young people, our young kids at an early age. Just free writing, they call it freelance writing, and most importantly, introduce it to adults who really need a hobby, or who are looking for ways to actually stimulate brain activities.
Right. And I have one other question before I turn it back over to Johannes. Back on, you don't have to go to the slide, but coping skills for adults. Let's talk about acknowledge your feelings.
Yeah.
Now I'm gonna put it in a male perspective while we're online here, so we can get this in context here. Acknowledging your feelings.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be a safe way to do it without attacking your manhood.
Right.
Okay. Without we talked about abuse or whatever. When we say acknowledge your feelings, we are not talking about in an abusive way,
Mm-hmm.
but a healthy way. Talk about that, please.
Yeah, it's something, and I think Dr. Browning could probably even elaborate more on too. It's unclothing. It's really taking off your clothes and saying, look, let's have this conversation. To your wife, look, I'm just not feeling well right now. And to be honest with you, the other day I told my wife, I was just sitting looking out of the window, and I said, I really am feeling angst. And she says, talk to me or elaborate. And it's much more of having a listening ear, because expressing your feelings is one thing, but for individuals who are listening, but people who express their feelings, there needs to be a listener. You don't have to be a professional facilitator, but just sit there and just listen to what the individual is saying. And sometimes it's just a need to unload how you're feeling, what you're going through at this particular time. And this, Stan, can you imagine right now all the amount of unemployment claims in this country, and those are underreported. Can you imagine what individuals are feeling at this particular time? And this country has a budget of $3.8 trillion, a working budget of $3.8 trillion, and they're having problems. Can you imagine a person who has a budget, a yearly salary under $50,000 in the budget that they have? Can you imagine what they're going through? If the federal government is stressing out and they're dealing with the money, they have all of our money that we sent to Washington. How can you imagine? Can you imagine what individuals are feeling with lower budgets and lower salaries? So we have to take that into consideration. And so coping skills is something that needs to be developed. It's a part of our resilience, and it's something that sustains us day to day. And some of those things, such as meditation and prayer, and I do that often. For those who aren't Christians, may want to meditate, or some who are Christians can meditate and pray. I'm a Christian and I pray, and I pray hard, and fast as well, to get through this whole pandemic stress that we're actually going through. But it's important that we express ourselves and let others around us know how we're feeling. I'm interested to find out, the number of incidences where people have thought about harming themselves or even harmed themselves during this pandemic. And I don't want to get into a conversation about it, because it's not appropriate to talk about this, because it could move people from one side of the fence to the next. But that's why it's important for listeners on the phone to understand that when people are making comments, you have to listen. You have to listen to not only the tone, but also the content of those conversations.
Thank you. Johannes?
Yes, we have a couple questions. This is Dr. Powell. Are there some forms that Black men can communicate and bond with over the internet?
Repeat that, please, Johannes.
Are there some forums that Black men can communicate and bond with one another that exist on the internet now that you know of?
I do not know of any offhand, but I'm going to go out on a limb and give my share my email address, and I can look up some resources because I know that there are some organizations out there, and my email address is edwin.powell2@gmail.com. And that's edwin.powell2@gmail.com. And you can actually send that to me, request that. And what I will do is I will send you back some links, because I know that there are some groups out there that actually are linking up and doing that.
Hey,
If I
this
could
is
respond
Randus
to that.
Wallace.
Yeah.
Hey, I just want to piggyback off that. I'm going to give my email out too. I have some resources. That's Randus, RANDOUS, Wallace, WALLACE @gmail.
I have a question, Johannes, from somebody sent me a question. So, Dr. Powell.
Johnson.
Dr. Brown wanted to make a comment, Brother Harry.
Okay,
Yes,
I'm
I
sorry.
could. Yeah, there are a lot of churches where their men's ministries or organizations have their teleconferencing as well. Matter of fact, our men are actually on the line. About 60 men each Thursday come together, and it's mainly discussion of how they're feeling, what they're going through. And so it's really iron sharpening iron, brothers speaking to brothers. And so many of the churches in your communities may have men's ministries that will have consistent weekly, especially now with churches pretty much being closed, will have weekly technological ways by which brothers can begin to share with each other. Because as Dr. Powell shared, that is a major piece with us as Black men, and the anger that was pre-existing before this. And so as Dr. Powell was sharing, you can imagine all the lack of coping skills that we normally have, how that's now being demonstrated in our personal lives. But a lot of churches are using technologies to allow brothers to come together to discuss the issues.
And not to mention, too, Reverend Dr. Browning, the prayer meetings. A lot of prayer meetings are being done over the phone as well. So,
Yeah, good. Here's a question that I got for you to ask you, Dr. Powell. Why, from a male perspective, we do not share our feelings?
but you know that has a lot to do with culture, in a manner in which we were raised and brought up. There are some African, and it's not an absolute, because there are individual males who do share their emotions, but over time, and I think we're starting to see a different trend, and in terms of younger men being able to share being much more emotional and sharing their emotions, not being afraid to cry in public, whereas, and you see it in in the NBA, you know, after game losses and so forth. But and I think that has a lot to do with particular era, the older eras. There was, you suppress your emotions. Young women were supposed to be seen but not heard, and so that those same adages passed on, that men should not ever cry, men should never share their emotions. But as a Christian, I know that Jesus cried when he heard that Lazarus had passed. So if he can cry, but as a Christian, and he can cry, then I also feel that crying is there's nothing wrong with crying. There's nothing wrong with cleansing yourself. Crying and showing emotion and spilling those emotions is a way of purging. And so so I just think it's pretty much generational. but it's also cultural as well.
Mr. Galvin, if you'd like to ask your question.
Yes.
Hello?
Hello, sir, we hear
Hello? Kind of breaking up. Just comment, and also, first of all, there's a lot of in-depth information being given. This is very, very good from everybody's perspective. I just wanted to know if it's possible that you look into a link to each of your emails. I know you've given, some have been given out, but as we go along and leave this conference, there'll be a lot of things that we want to reflect back on. And I just would suggest that maybe you have a link or a website, the one that we're on now, maybe, or some way that everybody put bullet points, maybe from their talk, or at least a link to the information, because there's a lot of stuff to digest and a lot of things that I think that would be useful that we could reflect back on.
So I think that this is going to be a start of a regular conversation. I believe that we're going to start having Zoom meetings with these 5 women, that we can have an interaction face to face and have calls back and forth starting this upcoming month.
Okay.
And let me say too, that this PowerPoint and the video of this session will be posted at ncnw.org in 3 or 4 days. We'll have it up so you can revisit this, and we'll put up the gentleman's contact information if they, I imagine they'll let us do that. And thank you for expressing appreciation for what we're trying to do. I'm so excited and pleased that you find it useful.
Dr. Powell, question says, liquor stores are deemed essential stores during the COVID-19. I have discovered that alcohol withdrawal during this time can be lethal. What are some ways that people can cope other than drinking, I guess?
Well, you know, I suspected that was one of the reasons why, you know, they kept liquor stores open, or ABC stores open for that very reason, because of the withdrawal. But I said earlier, whenever you drink, what you're doing, especially with this single strand RNA virus, when you drink, what you're doing is you're actually killing your gut flora and actually making yourself in decreasing your immune system, making yourself much more susceptible to the disease itself. And this disease, and I just want to remind the listeners, this disease is so highly protected. It's protected by spikes, something called a membrane, and also it's also protected by the nucleus of a cell. So it's way within a cell. It's within the nucleus of a cell. That's where this disease is. And so when we participate in high risk activities such as smoking and drinking, you're putting yourself much more at high risk for catching this disorder. So I would say that this is an opportunity for individuals who are heavy drinkers or who maybe have alcohol abuse issues to utilize the fact that they're at home with family, see if they could you know, the number of drinks with the help of either family members, and actually taper off the drinking, get on the phone, start talking with therapists and so forth and so on via telemedicine, and see if you can beat this thing. Perhaps this may be some silver lining in individuals who are actually dealing with ETOH abuse as well as drug abuse, is being at home and being with family and using this to their advantage.
All right, that's all the questions on this we have.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Powell. Didn't mean to talk you so long, but you have so much information. And we are, again, very fortunate to have you as a member of the CLFA Associates with NCNW. Thank you. And now it's my pleasure and honor to introduce, to bring Dr. Browning. Dr. Browning, when you all were talking, and I heard you got on the Christian standpoint, I was thinking about our brothers out there who are spiritual and not religious. They are not practicing, but they still humans and part of our community, and we love them and embrace them as well. So during this pandemic, so it's certainly not left, it's not all the church folks. We talking to everybody in our neighborhood. Some may pass the church. Some may even go near the church, maybe go once a Christmas, Mother's Day, and Easter, become CMEs. They may go then. But we're talking about our community and our brothers and sisters and our children. So I'll turn it over to you to present however you want this evening. Glad to have you with us.
Thank you, Brother Stanton. Again, I'm just honored to be part of this distinguished panel. I want to thank Dr. Cole as well as Attorney Mathis and Harry Johnson. Just want to say thank you again for the opportunity to be with you in the outstanding work that the National Council of Negro Women are doing. On a lighter side, I guess the biggest challenge facing us as Black men is when we're going to get a next haircut. So I see Dr. Powell. Mine is getting, I found out there's a reason why barbers have license. I started to try and cut. I said, no, I better hold off until my change comes. So, but again, I want to thank you so much. Jesus also went through a very similar kind of situation where he was going through the challenge right before his crucifixion. And he went to a place called the Garden of Gethsemane. And there he went to God in prayer, and Dr. Powell was lifting up the importance of prayer or communion with God. And as Dr. Stanton was sharing, regardless of your faith base, we have far more in common than we have different. And I'm a Christian. I realize there might be others who are Muslims and Buddhists and other different types of religions, but we all serve the same God. And the important thing is that Jesus went to his Heavenly Father in prayer. As he was facing his most challenging time in his life, and that was the crucifixion. Many of us are facing right now the most challenging time of our lives, and we really don't know what the future holds. We have more questions than answers, and so going to God in prayer, making sure you have this communion time with God is so important. And after Jesus prayed, he was able to have a nevertheless kind of faith, and that nevertheless is almost a word that doesn't need defining. It has a meaning of resolve that I'm going to make it after communing with God. And I believe that it's going to be a case by which I'm not only going to make it, but as men, especially Black men, there are others who are calling upon us and leaning upon us to make it as well, our families, our communities. And so it's important for us as men to have this nevertheless faith, to have this resolve that not only am I going to make it, but I'm also going to use my strength, my faith to make sure that my family, my community makes it through as well. But Jesus was not just wanting to make sure that he made it. He then had to pass it down to his disciples because they too were going through a kind of pandemic. And so after he went to the old rugged cross, after he suffered, bled, and died, was placed in a tomb, the disciples were distraught. They were much like us, again, going through a time of asking what's next. And so after they placed him in a tomb on Easter Sunday, women came to the tomb. They saw he was not there. They rushed back to the men and told the men that Jesus is not there. Most of the men just kind of dismissed what the women had to say. But the Bible says, however, Peter had to find out for himself. And so Peter actually went to the tomb, walked into the tomb. And when he got to the tomb, he kind of sat there in this empty tomb, wondering what was next in his life. And there might be some brothers at home right now who are kind of in a situation where they are too wondering, where is God in the midst of all of this? How are they going to make it? But the thing that Peter had to become to realize that in that empty tomb, Jesus's presence was there. He had to reorient himself. He had been used to being in the physical presence of Jesus. But Jesus had now resurrected, which meant he could be in all places at all times. And so Peter had to reorient his whole focus, realizing that his former relationship with Christ was not going to be the same as his future relationship with Christ. And the most important thing, in that tomb, God's presence was there. Jesus's presence was there. And I found out the importance of presence, that even though we don't have the answers, we do have the answer in Christ. And so when my grandmother died about 30 years ago, my pastor, Reverend Dr. Leroy Adams, came over to the family's house, walked in, did not say a word, just kind of sat there. And as it got uncomfortable, we finally just thanked him for coming over. And then we started talking about my grandmother. And then one person made a comment, another person talked about her cooking, another person talked about her spirit, another person talked about her love. And 45 minutes later, we were feeling so much better, and Reverend Adams still hadn't said anything, and ended with a word of prayer. And as he left, and we were just there by ourselves again, we just appreciated his presence. Sometimes there's really not answers. We don't have an answer to this. I know some persons want to refer to Revelations and the end times, but that's been going on for 2,000 years. The bottom line is this hits all of us, regardless of position, regardless of status in life. So we really don't have answers. But it's important to realize we do have his presence. And sometimes if you think about it, his presence is more important than the answer. So I do encourage persons during this time to get into the presence of God, prayer, fasting, reading God's word, as well as those of you who can give of your time and talent to helping others. We have been feeding about 5,000 persons these last couple of weeks. And persons come out to the church. We follow social distancing rules and regulations, but they're able to give food to the poor, able to give food to our brothers and sisters who are going through life's greatest challenges. So our communion with God is not just praying and fasting, reading the scripture, but it's also finding persons that you can help. There's a person in our community that put a note in each one of our mailboxes that if you were a senior citizen, he would be willing to go to the grocery store or to the pharmacy to get your prescriptions or your food. All of us can find something to do to help somebody else that will allow God's presence to be with us. But then after Peter went from the tomb, he then went into the upper room. And in some ways, he was kind of much like us. He was shut down. He was locked in. He was quarantined because the Roman government was after him. The religious leaders were after him, and the people were after him. And the feeling was they were going to do exactly to him what they had done to Jesus. So he was quarantined. But again, in that quarantine upper room experience, Jesus' presence came. But not only his presence, we also had a chance to see that his promise came. And it's important to realize that God's promise is that he's going to be with you, that he's going to take care of you. And sometimes it requires situations like this for us to begin to put our faith in someone that's bigger, stronger, and wiser than we are. My father went home to be with the Lord about 3 years ago. And right before he died, they had to cut off his leg. And so doctors were sharing with us that be ready for him to be depressed and going through all kinds of changes, having lost a limb. And so after they cut it off, he went into the room after he recovered, and he was saying, God will take care of me. I won't complain. And we were surprised. I just asked, Dad, how are you able to handle this in such a great way? And he said, and I've held on to this, if you can't change the situation, change your attitude about it. Brother Johnson, he's an Omega man. If you can't change the situation, change your attitude about it. And that becomes very important. Peter was in the upper room in a pandemic situation, locked in. So he had to change his attitude about the situation. And for many of us, and it's been talked about today, we have to change our attitude. We can't change the situation, but we can change our attitude. Persons have talked about art and creative writing and music and cooking, looking at other ways by which we can now go through life differently. We can't just stay in the house complaining, woe is me, this is so terrible. Change our attitude, creative ways by which we can spend more quality time with our spouses, more quality time with our children, more quality times with our loved one, reading, expanding our territory, expanding our outlook. This is a phenomenal time to not just grow spiritually, but to grow intellectually. Find hobbies and ways by which you can expand yourself and grow. So when you come out of this, you'll come out of this wiser, stronger, and better. So Peter, from this experience, realized he had to change his attitude about how he was now going to live his future life now that Christ was no longer there physically. And so right after the upper room, he went to fish. He had to, in our case, we would go to the grocery store. In Peter's case, he had to find some way how to survive. And that fishing, there again, he met Jesus's presence on the beach. And when Jesus was on the beach, he not only said that his presence was there, not only his promise that he would take care of Peter, but also his protection. And we have to realize that God is going to take care of you. His protection is all around us. And so once Peter got to the beach and realized that Jesus was there, his faith had to kick in. And so God's protection around us and through us and in us is ultimately grounded in our faith. Right before the pandemic, I was cooking pancakes for our grandchildren. And the Bible says that faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Faith has a substance to it. So when I'm cooking pancakes, the substance of pancakes are 2 eggs, the pancake mix, about 1/3 of a tablespoon of oil, and then put in some milk. That's the substance of pancakes. So after I put that into a bowl, stirred it up, my grandchildren looked at it and said, "Papa, what's that?" And I said, "This is the pancake mix." They said, "It looks like nothing but soupy milk. How is this going to turn into pancakes?" And I said, even though it doesn't look like what it's going to be, the substance of what's in the pancakes are there. Faith has a substance, but you have to put that faith into a pan. It has to have a container by which your faith can go. And for me, my container is Jesus. And so once I take that pancake mix, put it into the pan, the container, and have it on the heat, what looks like soupy milk one moment then turns into pancakes the next moment. Somebody prayerfully who's listening today, your faith is going to allow you to move from where you are to get to what you want to get to. And that is from something that appears to be nothing to something that will be something that'll get you through. And so after the grandkids were eating the pancakes, my grandson said, "Papa, why do your pancakes taste so good?" And my granddaughter says, "Because of love." The most important thing that's going to get us through this is to know that Jesus loves you. Matter of fact, there's nobody loves you more than he does. Nobody wants you to get out of what you're going through more than he does. And it's grounded in his love. And the same love that will get us through is the same love that got our foremothers and forefathers through. Yes, this is a challenging time, but we've faced challenging times before. Our foremothers and forefathers had to go on plantation fields and had the highest bidder bid on their whole existence. We've had hard times before. They worked from can't see in the morning till can't see at night without a dime in return. We've had hard times before. We were the last hired, the first fired. We've had hard times before. We've gone through nadirs where they lynched us and called us everything but a child of God. We've gone through hard times before. We faced dogs and fire hoses and told that we would never be anything and never could do anything. We've gone through hard times before. Dr. King said, "I may not get there with you, but we as a people will get to the promised land." So I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man, for my eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. And if you have his presence, if you know his promise, and you feel his protection, you too will be able to get through this. And you too, like Dr. King, will be able to see his glory, not on that side, but on this side. And so I hear our foremothers speaking from heaven saying, "Hold on a little while longer. These heavy burdens will soon be passing over. Run the race, keep the faith in God's own time. Our change is going to come out." Hear our old songs that our foremothers used to sing. Jesus is a rock in a weary land. That he's a rock in a weary land, a rock in a weary land, a shelter in the time of storm. And then I hear the song that we sing all the time in church. My hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. I dare not trust the sweetest frame, but wholly lean on Jesus' name, on Christ, the solid rock I stand. All of the ground is sinking sand. But I love that second verse. His oath, his covenant, and his blood will support me in this whelming flood. When all around my soul gives way, he then is all my hope and stay. On Christ, the solid rock I stand. All of the ground is sinking sand. You may not be able to see a barber, but I thank God Jesus' presence is with you, and he will get you through. And when we get through this, I believe we'll get through with the shout and say, thank you, Jesus, for making a way out. God bless you tonight.
Wow.
God bless.
Wow.
Man.
Amen.
Wow.
Amen.
Wow.
Oh,
Dr. Brian, now we see how you took it from those small members to 8,000. God bless you. God bless you for the word.
God bless you. Thank you for the honor of being with this distinguished panel.
What a great panel. Panel, give yourselves a round of applause. Dr. Cole and Attorney Mathis, thank you so much for allowing us to be on tonight. Our time is up. But before we go, I do want to add a clip and say that you too can become a member of the Charles L. Franklin Associates by going to the ncnw.org and join us. We appreciate you joining us tonight. We appreciate your thoughts, your prayers, and how we can make this better and help National Council of Negro Women. Dr. Cole, keep doing what you're doing. We appreciate you so much. We've loved you from the very beginning that we met you. We love you until you're going to leave here. So God bless you and God bless everything that you do.
blessings.
God
Have a
bless
good
you.
evening. JD, do you want to say anything? You want to say good night?
I just want to say good night and thank you all. And Dr. Browning, you just lifted me up higher. Thank
Yes,
you.
sir.
God bless you.
Encouraged me. Thank
God
you.
bless you.
I hope you
Brother
enjoyed
Johannes, thank you.
Now, you know, Brother Stan, you can end us with a song if you want to.
I think we better go. Yeah,
Good
it's
night.
getting late. It's
God
getting
bless
late
you.
in the evening, and the sun is going down. Okay.